other things to catch up, get the neckline back to where it's supposed to be. And today we are hand sewing that facing down. So while I do this, just relax and enjoy. I'll play some of my music, one of my royalty-free music mixes available on my channel. It just makes life so much easier because no one is trying to, find the perfect mix like on the fly, and none of us want to have the monetization people yell at us. So we want to find the right thing, the right time. So let me go ahead and pull up one of my mixes and I'll get to my handwork. I can't even remember when I made my mixes. Like, it's so funny how old this is. I'll have to click by oldest. I have to select by oldest. Okay, let's see. High energy. I'm not feeling that on a Monday night. How about... There's no way these are the oldest. Oh, okay, good. It'll definitely help drown out the sound of everyone like in the background, which is really just my neighbor mowing, so it's whatever. All right, this is a precarious way of doing things, I'll tell you that much. This is not my usual location for any sewing. I don't know who would choose such a thing. Here we go. So this is all of our hard work from last time. Looking good, nice and smooth on the outside. We always want to make sure the inside looks as good as the outside. So that's what my challenge is today. I'm always going to pick from where you can't see it from the inside or the outside. So right now there's multiple layers underneath, so I'm going to get into that seam allowance and sew that through. And that way I can start strong and keep everything invisible. I'll do a couple anchoring stitches to start with because I am anxious. So I don't want anything to come out, especially with a dance costume. Grab this a few more times over here and then start going the other way. Interestingly, this is like the easiest part of sewing to me, and I don't mind it. It's just funny how you get used to surging and working on the fastest and trying to get things out on time and all that stuff, and then you lose like the fun stuff. So there's lots of different ways you could do this. I'm trying to do this as invisible as possible. So I'm just taking a little bit from each seam allowance on the interior to make sure that I can continue this all the way across. If you notice, there's nothing on the outside, nothing on the inside. Our goal here is really just to cover up all of this ugly stuff inside. No one wants that on their neck. So we want to have a nice satin finish for our client to enjoy the garment. Need to start taking smaller stitches, that's for sure. Sometimes you get so excited to like finish off a section that you miss all the space. There we go. I usually look at my thumb right here and kind of decide how big a stitch should be. To me, it should be about halfway between in any direction of your thumb at the most. If it's a finer detail, you're going to want a smaller stitch. And with this kind of stitch, I always go back and do a back stitch every couple stitches so that if a stitch pops, the whole thing isn't falling apart in my hands. Sounds like some kind of like 90s or like late 80s rom-com. Maybe starring Eddie Murphy with a special guest star of an alleyway with night lights. It's just a little jazzy. Hilarious. I don't know where some of these songs came from, honestly. I remember researching it like when I was actually like in a completely different role. I think I was like teaching at the time, And it was like just such a fun way to pass the time on my lunch breaks between like actually teaching and then studying for my own master's degree. And like I just made a bunch of these like mixes to just keep me awake, because a lot of times I was just covering like a study hall class or something. I wasn't like doing much of anything when I was working on these, so it was always entertaining. I'm just sewing down the facing to the neckline to a client's dress. As you can see, there's no stitches on this side, so we want to keep it like that for the inside. The way I do that is just by stitching through the seam allowance on the interior and just repeating that over and over. Some people call it a catch stitch. I don't know. What I'm doing isn't all that special, so it's like, to me, it's more like a whip stitch, because it is kind of like not really like put together. And it's a little longer. It's a little bit more of a basting stitch, but it'll hold because there's nothing really for it to unravel on. Here we are at a seam in the neckline. We want to make sure that periodically we are really securing this down. So we'll have a little binding stitch right here, where I just do a few in the same spot. Just to really kind of secure before we move into the next segment of the neckline. More of a tack, if you will. And then you can finish that. So I don't even know how much that recorded, because apparently I ran out of time. So that was bizarre. Oh, okay. Here we are. Working on the facing still. This should be the last stretch. I just added some new thread and secured that. And now I will continue. Now we see here we've got some things popping out. You just use your snips. Everyone should have a pair. Walk, super cheap. I think they're under $1. Put them on a lanyard and you can keep those around your neck and not lose them. Like I lose everything in my studio. I wonder how much of my conversation about burlesque costuming got cut off. I'm not sure. But I'll share again, just in case. If you are the type not to want to get into alterations, that is just fine. I would suggest you definitely take like a part-time job in it at some point in your career, or learn from YouTube. All-powerful YouTube has all the greats on here, a lot of talented people. But once you learn those skills, if you're not interested in those and like you don't want to be the person who like fixes someone's pants, you can always like build your skills in other places. So for me, I ended up learning bridal alterations just by working at David's for a while. I think I was only there for 6 months, probably 2 days a week. I was teaching full time and then just like hopping down over to David Bridal on a Saturday and Mondays after work. And all I had to do was just sew. That was like the best. Because of my schedule, they were so happy to have me. And they were just like, you know, come in whenever you can, basically. Because there were other people who would do like, you know, more consultations, work with the brides. And I just didn't have time to that. I was there to learn and get out, basically. So it worked out for me to learn bridal skills, bring those back, use them for my own clients. You know, kind of like David's Bridal would not let you accept an alteration within a certain time frame before the wedding, especially if it was like something crazy, like, you know, during June, which is like our busiest season, and like, you know, maybe it's a pregnant bridesmaid or pregnant bride and there's a ton of alterations to do, or if it's just a picky bride, which exists, and that's okay, it's your day. If you had some of those, like those people could not get in 2 weeks before their wedding. Like, it's just not, you waited too long, the dress came in late, whatever the case was, they would have to get recommended to another local seamstress or sewist. And I was quickly there to make sure that they were taken care of. So I think the thing about like working in an alteration shop, specifically for bridal, it's also helpful to understand like how much things should cost. Because David's was charging the actual bride $60 an hour for a lot of our, well, for all of our work. And then we were paid $12.90, I think. And then if it wasn't bridal season, they were trying to cut your hours. So you could never get a full-time job there unless you were the salaried alterations manager, basically. So like nothing was promised. It was just kind of like, yeah, maybe next week you'll work 5 hours, maybe you'll work 20. So in my case, I wasn't really worried about that, but there were like obviously full-grown women there, you know, who have these great skills. A couple of them were like master tailors that I met who taught me a ton of stuff, and they were getting $12.90 just because David's could get away with it. And with those extra skills, like I did get a lot of business, but I don't know if it was like the business I wanted to build my muscle in, so to speak. So I ended up finding a bunch of friends who were performers and actresses and who needed some help with their costumes. They needed costuming pieces that were unique, were original, that would wow people. And so, of course, I love sparkles. So working with the burlesque crowd and just performers in general and dancers, I kind of got into that niche, especially once I got my serger. Once that serger was in, man, that opened up so many doors. So if you're on the fence about a serger, you're going to use your sewing machine a lot more if you have a serger, because the serger actually like makes you confident in your skills. The sewing machine just like everything just doesn't look quite finished unless you have done like, you know, some kind of crazy French seam on every kind of thing, and you got like a rolled hem, and like if you use like a zigzag stitch on your swimwear and stuff, like it just doesn't feel quite as finished as it does when you're using a cover stitch or a serger. So you can get a serger for like $300, and I'd say it's worth it. I have the same one. I have the Singer Pro finish I've had for about 15 years now. If you're going to do it full time, I would just say get the $300 one now, and by the time you have enough of a client base, you can upgrade, pay $1,200, get yourself an industrial, because those are designed to last forever. So as long as you pay $90 once a year to your maintenance man, those will work full time for 20, 30, 40 years for you. Will I ever get one? Hopefully. But I'm the type, like, I want all of my machines and all of like my tech and all like my gear and stuff to be paid for like by the business, so to speak, as opposed to like by me personally. So if I make $100, you know, that $100 just goes to something cool or fabric or something like that. I don't want to dip into like my own budget. Here, we're coming to a close here, and it's always the tricky part because you don't want to have it too visible on either side. So how do you get around that? You just kind of tuck all your stitches away and snip the excess. This is where you kind of get those twists. You don't want to deal with that too much. We'll do it 2-3 times, lock it off. This should be the last stitch. And I hope you guys will join me tomorrow as I continue this adventure of finishing this dress. Now tomorrow I probably have some more handwork to do. Actually, I don't know. I don't know what I'll do tomorrow. I've got a gig tomorrow. I never have plans and suddenly I have plans tomorrow. So we'll see. TBD on that. Hopefully you can visit me again soon. I'm Rachel, this is RRD Creates, and we just completed our beautiful finish on our facing for our neckline to this dress. Nothing on the outside is visible, minimal on the inside, and that's all we're going for. So, talk soon. Make sure to like and follow if you're a fashionista or if you're just interested in design, sewing skills, and a little bit of graphic design and business as this year goes on. So, have a good one. Bye.